Pick in the 2026 WNBA draft, the Indiana Fever have selected the person that got waved off because they can't shoot, the person that was on the floor as UCLA is putting belt to South Carolina's ass, Raven Johnson. Now, who knows? Maybe they just drafted her because another team is looking at her and they're going to trade her.
That's the face of a front office that just made a decision so baffling, so completely disconnected from reality, that even the most optimistic Fever fans immediately knew something had gone terribly wrong. With the 10th overall pick in the 2025 WNBA draft, the Indiana Fever selected Raven Johnson, a defensive guard from South Carolina who can't shoot and plays a position where the team literally has no available minutes. And the reaction from the fan base was instantaneous chaos.
Into hiding. They're about to go into hiding. You're right, Riki. They couldn't be more proud of this pick. They could not be more proud of this pick. Forget Raven Johnson aside. We needed a 4. And you guys get a guard who we have no minutes for. Oh, God. And yes, I have to just rub some people's nose in it a little.
Look at those comments flooding in. This isn't normal draft criticism. This is a fan base in full revolt. Trade Caitlin Clark immediately. Get CC out of Indiana. This organization doesn't deserve her. Within minutes of the pick being announced, Fever fans weren't just questioning the decision, they were actively begging their franchise player to request a trade. When was the last time you saw a fan base turn on their own front office this violently over a single draft pick? Here's what makes this particularly damning. The Fever had genuine needs. They desperately needed a power forward, someone with size who could help protect the paint and grab rebounds. Zia Cook was still on the board at pick 10. At 6'3", she's exactly the kind of three-point shooting big they needed. But instead, general manager Amber Cox and head coach Stephanie White selected a 6-foot guard who shot 28% from three-point range during her college career.
Shit emojis all over the place. Damn. A 5'9" defender that can't shoot and plays a position where there are no minutes available. Nice. David Eichholt, somebody that's covered Caitlin Clark from all the way in the Iowa days, follows women's basketball religiously. He went up. And Gianna Nipkins, she was available. Just gloss right over her.
And this is where it gets personal. Stephanie White spent the entire college basketball season doing commentary work for women's tournament games. She was literally calling South Carolina games, watching Raven Johnson play, and apparently fell in love with what she saw. The problem? What she saw was a defensive specialist on a team so stacked with offensive talent that Johnson's inability to shoot didn't matter. Dawn Staley could hide that weakness. Stephanie White won't have that luxury in Indiana. The Fever already have Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell as their starting backcourt. Both are ball-dominant guards who need the floor spaced around them. They need shooters, they need size, they need versatility. Raven Johnson provides none of those things. So where exactly does she fit in this rotation?
It was one of those Haley Van Lith smiles. I'm smiling through it all. I'm so happy to be drafted to the Indiana Fever. Not happy at all. Not happy one bit. Let me show you real quick. Oh, goodness gracious, folks. We're on the fly right here. Look at this.
This isn't just about basketball fit. This is about a pattern of decision-making from the Fever front office that suggests they're operating on nostalgia and personal connections rather than strategic team building. Look at their recent signings. They brought in players who used to live in Indiana. They signed the sister of a Pacers player. They added former UConn players because Stephanie White used to coach there. It's like they're building a team based on LinkedIn connections instead of actual roster needs. And here's the kicker. Remember the 2024 Elite Eight game between Iowa and South Carolina? Caitlin Clark waved off Raven Johnson on defense, signaling to her teammates that Johnson wasn't a shooting threat and they could sag off her. It was one of the most disrespectful defensive gestures you'll see in college basketball. South Carolina ended up winning that tournament, but that moment defined how opposing coaches viewed Johnson's offensive limitations. Now they're teammates. How exactly is that dynamic supposed to work?
I was optimistic about the other signings, but now I'm sick. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. Everybody was twerking, and then suddenly the music stopped. Suddenly the music stopped. Y'all are just intentionally sabotaging my GOAT. I knew Stephanie White would do this shit to us. She was glazing Raven all college season long during when she called the damn games. I'm so effing mad. What the F? Why not the 6'6" Ocots?
Watch Raven Johnson's reaction when her name was called by Indiana. That's not the face of someone excited to join a team with championship potential. That's not the smile of a player thrilled to team up with the biggest star in women's basketball. That's someone who just realized they're walking into an absolute mess of a situation. Compare that to how other draft picks reacted when their names were called. The contrast is stark, and the Fever fanbase picked up on it immediately. They're not just angry about the pick itself. They're angry because it confirms everything they've been afraid of since Amber Cox and Kelly Krauskopf took over basketball operations. This front office doesn't have a plan. They don't have a coherent vision for building around Caitlin Clark. They're making emotional decisions based on college basketball nostalgia instead of WNBA roster construction.
Raptor, you greedy. The comments, yeah. This is a Steph White pick. Stephanie Methany White. Amber Cox. Kelly Krauskopf. Now, mind you, I'm already pissed off. Oh, this is such a waste of a pick. I hope Caitlin Clark leaves this sorry-ass organization. I'm so dead-ass. A 6-foot, 3-point sniper available, and yet here.
Let's talk about what the Fever could have done with this pick. Gianna Kniepkens was still available. She's a versatile wing who can actually shoot the basketball and defend multiple positions. Zia Cook would have given them the size they desperately need in the front court. There were multiple players on the board who addressed actual roster needs. Instead, they drafted someone who duplicates what they already have, except worse, because Johnson can't shoot well enough to play off the ball effectively. This is the same front office that's supposed to be building a championship contender around a generational talent. Caitlin Clark just finished one of the most impressive rookie seasons in WNBA history. She broke the single-season assist record. She transformed the Fever from a lottery team into a playoff team. She's the reason attendance doubled, she's the reason TV ratings exploded, and this is how the front office supports her? By drafting a backup point guard who can't shoot when they need front court help?
Oh, shit. Oh my God. Yeah, this is great. The quotes and the replies are just, F you, Amber, F you, Kelly, F you, Stephanie. Y'all don't deserve Caitlin Clark. Folks, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Please, let me know your thoughts. Don't hold back. Be respectful, but don't hold back. I told y'all, man. Stephanie, Amber, and Kelly they have no idea what they're doing.
The social media meltdown was immediate and brutal. Fans were posting crying emojis, skull emojis, and just straight profanity in the replies to the Fever's announcement tweet. "This is a Stephanie White pick" became the rallying cry because everyone knew exactly what happened. White fell in love with Johnson while calling South Carolina games, convinced herself that elite defense translates automatically to the WNBA, and ignored the glaring offensive limitations that make Johnson nearly unplayable in certain matchups. And here's what makes this situation even more precarious for the Fever. Caitlin Clark is eligible for a contract extension soon. She's going to have options. She's going to have leverage. And if she looks around at this roster and sees a front office that continues to make baffling decisions that don't maximize her championship window, why would she commit long-term to Indiana? The New York Liberty just won a championship with a smart, aggressive front office that knows how to build around stars. The Las Vegas Aces have won back-to-back titles with elite roster construction. What exactly is Indiana offering Clark that would make her want to stay?
I know that would mean so much to me. Maybe they trade her. Maybe not. See you next time, and as always, take it easy.
Here's the fundamental problem with the Raven Johnson selection and why it reveals something deeper about how the Fever front office operates. This wasn't a swing and miss on a high upside prospect. This wasn't a gamble on someone with elite physical tools who needs development. This was drafting a player whose strengths don't match your team's needs and whose weaknesses directly conflict with how your best player operates. Caitlin Clark needs the floor space. She needs defenders to respect the three-point line so she can operate in pick and roll and drive and kick situations. Raven Johnson's defender will sag off her every single possession, clogging the paint and making it harder for Clark to create. It's addition by subtraction in reverse. You're actively making your best player's job more difficult by putting someone on the floor who can't punish defenses for ignoring them. And let's be clear about what Raven Johnson is as a prospect. She's an excellent on-ball defender with quick hands and good lateral movement. In the right system, with the right roster construction around her, she could be a valuable role player. But the Fever aren't the right system. They don't have the offensive firepower to hide a non-shooter in the backcourt. They don't have the defensive personnel to play the kind of grinded-out style where Johnson's strengths would shine. This is a square peg, round hole situation that anyone with basic basketball knowledge could see coming. Stephanie White has been praised for her player development skills and her ability to connect with athletes. Those are valuable traits for a head coach, but this draft pick reveals a blind spot that could derail the Fever's entire competitive window. She's evaluating players based on what they did in college systems that don't resemble what Indiana needs to do in the WNBA. Dawn Staley at South Carolina could afford to play Raven Johnson heavy minutes because she had multiple elite scorers around her. Stephanie White doesn't have that luxury in Indiana. She has Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and a bunch of role players. Every minute matters. Every roster spot matters. The Fever fanbase understands this instinctively, which is why the backlash was so immediate and so vicious. They've watched this front office make questionable decision after questionable decision, always justified with some vague platitude about culture or fit or Indiana connections, and they're tired of it. They want a front office that's ruthlessly focused on winning championships, not one that's making picks based on who the coach enjoyed watching on television during March Madness. Think about the message this sends to Caitlin Clark. She just carried this franchise to relevance. She's the reason the Fever went from playing in front of 2,000 fans to selling out arenas. She's the reason ESPN is actually showing Fever games in prime time. And when the front office has a chance to add talent around her, they draft someone who makes her job harder. How is she supposed to interpret that? How is she supposed to trust that this organization is serious about winning? The comparison to how other WNBA franchises operate is stark. Look at what the New York Liberty did to build around Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu. They were aggressive in free agency. They made smart trades. They drafted players who fit specific needs. They built a championship roster through intelligent, strategic decision-making. The Las Vegas Aces did the same thing around Aja Wilson. Even the Minnesota Lynx, who are rebuilding, are making smart picks that address roster needs and fit their timeline. Indiana just drafted a backup point guard who can't shoot when they needed a power forward. That's not a difference in philosophy. That's not a calculated risk. That's organizational incompetence. And here's what's going to happen next. The Fever are going to try to spin this. They're going to talk about Raven Johnson's leadership and her defensive intensity and her winning pedigree at South Carolina. They're going to say all the right things about how she fits their culture and their system, but none of that changes the fundamental basketball reality. She can't shoot well enough to play significant minutes in a backcourt with Caitlin Clark. She doesn't have the size to defend wings effectively. She's a tweener guard on a team that already has guards and desperately needs frontcourt help. The saddest part, Raven Johnson didn't ask for any of this. She's a good player who got drafted into a terrible situation by a front office that didn't think through how she'd actually fit on the roster. Now she's going to be the scapegoat for organizational dysfunction that has nothing to do with her. She's going to be the symbol of everything wrong with how the Fever make decisions. And that's not fair to her, but it's the reality of getting drafted by a team that clearly didn't have a plan. So where does this leave the Indiana Fever? They have the best young player in women's basketball, a player who could define the next decade of the WNBA. And they have a front office that just used a top 10 draft pick on someone who doesn't address any of their actual needs. The gap between the Fever's potential and their actual roster construction is massive, and it's entirely self-inflicted. Caitlin Clark deserves better than this. The Fever fanbase deserves better than this. And honestly, Raven Johnson deserves better than getting drafted into this mess. But this is what happens when you have a front office making decisions based on emotion and nostalgia instead of cold, hard basketball logic. The WNBA is too competitive, the margin for error too small, to waste draft picks on players who don't fit your system. The question now is whether Amber Cox and Stephanie White will learn from this disaster or double down on their approach. Because if they keep making decisions like this, Caitlin Clark isn't going to stick around to watch her prime years get wasted. And the Fever will go right back to being an irrelevant franchise playing in front of empty arenas, wondering what could have been. So tell me in the comments, if you're Caitlin Clark, how much longer do you give this front office to figure it out before you start exploring your options? Because I'm not sure I'd even wait for my contract to expire. Let me know what you think, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.